I've made videos like this before, and so have other people, but I think this will be the most comprehensive and complete list of Dremel bits out there to date, so it might be a little longer than normal. Feel free to skip around. I'll explain most of the Dremel bits you might run into, like those that come with the Dremel as well as lots that don't. I'll also cover third-party bits and the new Dremel Max Life lineup. I'll also talk about these recently unreleased Dremel bits, which are super cool, and finally I'll cover what I think is the most underappreciated Dremel bit towards the end. I'll put an Amazon link for each bit I cover in the description below. Alright, let's get going. So you can't use a bit without the right collet, so we'll start there. When you tighten down the black collet nut onto the silver collet, it squeezes in and holds the bit in place, but there are limitations. For the standard Dremel collet, the max size is about 3.2 millimeters, or 1/8 of an inch in freedom units. If you buy a Dremel branded bit, almost all of them will be compatible. Some bits might be a little smaller though, like these drill bits, so you'll need smaller collets. This pack of Dremel collets has 4 sizes. If you're a normal person, you might prefer the keyless chuck, which can fit all 4 of the previous sizes. Technically it's for light duty accessories, but I use it for everything. Some brands sell 1/4 inch burrs that look like Dremel bits, but don't try it. They aren't for Dremels, they won't fit, and you'll be pissed. These are mandrels. They're essentially bits that you attach other designated accessories to. These are sanding drum mandrels, which attach sandpaper. This is a 401 mandrel, usually for buffing pads. You just screw it in. This is the 402 mandrel, which has a little screw on top, and it's for sanding, cutting, and grinding discs, among other things. This is the less common, larger version for bits like the 801 and some other disc-shaped bits. Finally, this is the Easy 402 mandrel, which is a real flagship and attaches sanding and cutting discs, buffing wheels, polishing wheels, the list goes on. You just pull down, put the accessory on, twist 90, let go, and you're set. Dremel's pushing the Easy system for new stuff, which is great for changing bits quickly, but not so great if you're buying third-party bits. Okay, let's get in depth for the bits. These are routing bits, and they sure route, but they're also good for engraving and cutting consistent depths. They're usually paired with an attachment like the Dremel 565 or the Dremel plunge router to keep them vertical and at the right depth. You just need to remember that the bits with these smooth cylindrical guides are designed for running along the edge of the wood, while these others can be used for cutting along their whole profile. These are the cutter style engraving bits for wood, fiberglass, ceramics, plastic, soft metals, whatever. I use these for almost every project to add small details or to engrave lettering. Pretty much did this whole carving with them. Thanks Victoria for this wood in 9th grade, not sure what it is. I'll get to the diamond engravers in a bit. This is a Kutzall burr, specifically the Extreme Flame burr, which is fantastic for roughing out wood carvings and removing a lot of material quickly. It has tungsten carbide teeth, which make it really durable, and I've had this one for 4 years now about, and it still cuts well. The black paint's mostly gone, but the sharpness remains, and if it gums up, you can just torch out whatever's stuck and clean it out. Kutzall has several shapes and different grits to choose from. For example, this is the coarse taper burr instead of the extreme spiky style. And that brings me to these. Dremel reached out and sent me these 3 carving bits, which you can see look very similar to the Kutzall. By the way, they aren't paying me and I can say whatever I want. At the time I recorded this video, these hadn't yet been announced, so I was one of the first to get my hands on them, which is not the case anymore. But overall I'm super excited that Dremel's doing their own take on this style, and I think it's long overdue. They're made from a hardened stainless steel. I expected a tungsten carbide, but I'm sure they're fine. Now, I haven't actually gotten the chance to use these or see how they hold up over time, so I'm not going to lie to you and make up advice or knowledge. I'll post a video on them later once I get to know them better. And even though I got them pre-released, I was so slow to edit this video that they're currently available, which means you can find them in the description right now and you can be one of the first to get them. These are sanding drums. Dremel sells them in 1/2 inch and 1/4 inch sizes, and they sell them in 120 and 60 grit. You can get other sizes and grits like these though from third parties. They're obviously good for sanding wood or really soft metals, anything you could normally use sandpaper for. Some people also like to use the lower grit sanding drum for carving. They don't last very long, and even though Dremel brand sanding paper is more durable, I usually buy off-brand replacements on Amazon since you can get so many for a low price. To change the paper, you loosen the screw on the top, pull off the paper, not like that, pull off the paper, replace it, then tighten it on. Tightening it expands the drum, holding the paper in place. Dremel also sells these Easy Drum Mandrels, which are pretty neat. You just pull it up to loosen it, pull off the sandpaper, put a new one on, and then pop it back down and it's secure. Same expansion concept, just a different strategy. I like these because they make it a lot faster to replace the paper. There's also the Dremel Max Life 60 grit carbide sanding drum, which is fixed onto the mandrel, and it's supposed to last 30 times longer than a normal sanding drum. Pretty nuts, right? They even painted it gold so I could get a cool thumbnail. Mine didn't last too long though, since I was trying to grind this composite granite, but hopefully it would last you longer. Also, according to Dremel, it can be used for things like wall tile, composites, and gourds. Who's buying this for gourds? I don't know, you do you. Anyways, this is the Dremel 3/8 inch flap wheel sander, 80 grit as you can see. They also come in 120, and off-brand ones are all over the place. Usually I'll use these for really intense sanding, and sometimes they can get into areas that the drum sanders can't since they're wider and thinner. Dremel also sells 3/16 thick ones for even tighter spots. For example, you'd have to angle the sanding drum to reach the center of this piece, but the flap wheel reaches it just fine to get a flatter sand. These are great for wood, rust, or paint removal, you name it. I also get the off-brand bulk packs of these to save money. This is a sanding disc, the 413, and its thin profile lets you get into places that the drum or the flap wheels can't. You can also get less tool marks when you use it, since it bends a bit along contours. The Stone Age ones use the 402 mandrel, but they rip easily, and they have that center screw that stops you from using the middle of it. So I prefer the Easy 402 version, called the Easy 413 SA. I use these a lot for sanding wood, and I usually avoid buying more by cutting out sandpaper myself and gluing it to the worn out ones. In my best bits and burrs for wood carving video, I get into that in more detail if you want to check it out. I think there's just these 3 grits available, 60, 120, and 240. These are the Dremel abrasive brushes, the Easy 471 through 474 SA, which use the Easy 402 mandrel and are for sanding out hard to reach areas since they're so thin. They're an abrasive rubber and come in 36, 120, and 220 grit. This gray one is 36 and the white is 120. If Dremel sponsored me, maybe I'd have the 220. Contrary to some comments, I don't work for them. I'm honestly not a huge fan of these since the gap between the layers sometimes leaves this textured effect. Alright, let's cover the wheels. These are the metal cutting wheels, which come in different shapes and can cut screws, bolts, pipes, sheet metal, lots of stuff. The 402 mandrel can use these small red 409 or 420 cutting discs, but I found they're really small and really brittle, so sometimes they explode, which usually isn't the goal. Good reason to keep on your safety glasses. There's also the 426B cutting wheels, which are fiberglass reinforced and larger, making them less likely to explode and more useful in my opinion. They do shrink over time as you can see. The Easy 402 mandrel versions, called the Easy 456B, are even larger, and I prefer these since they're so easy to change out. There's also a Max Life premium metal one with a cubic boron nitride coating, which is supposed to last 20 times longer and won't shrink, but it will dull. I really torture tested this though, and it still cuts great. I also forgot how hot metal gets when you're cutting it, and went ahead and melted my new vice grips, so be careful.
Oops.
By the way, as a little life hack, these wheels are great for getting out stripped screws. This is the 545 diamond cutting wheel, which has a little diamond dust coating. It's for really hard and stubborn materials like marble, concrete, wood, brick, ceramics. You get the idea. Remember not to use diamond bits for metal, because it can really dull it quickly. Not sure why I ended up melting this tile. This is the newer 545 HP multi-purpose cutting wheel, which is supposed to last 3 times longer than the normal 545. If this one had a little layer of diamond, and this one has a ton of diamond, why does it last longer? Who cares? This cuts like nobody's business. By the way, these are clips from actual projects on my channel, so feel free to check them out. This is the thin cut cutting wheel, which is supposed to be almost half the thickness of the 545 HP, since it's 0.6 millimeters instead of the normal 1.1. But honestly, I can barely tell the difference. Here I'm testing it against the 456B cutting aluminum, starting with the thin cut on the left. And yeah, it's a little thinner. I can't really imagine where that difference would be significant, but if you need it, it's on the market. This is the plastic cutting wheel, and it's for cutting other cutting wheels. Just kidding, please don't do that. It's designed for clean cuts in plastic and plexiglass, and it does a pretty good job. Careful though, softer plastics can melt from the friction and gunk these up pretty bad. As a general rule of thumb, melty materials gunk up bits, and not every bit can be clean like the Kutzall. Here we have a serrated saw blade, which you can see I don't have. I do have this nice cardboard one though for educational purposes. I've never even bothered buying one of these because other cutting wheels work just fine. And I've heard these serrated ones have a ton of kickback and can be really dangerous, but this was a fun experiment. This is the Easy 544 wood cutting wheel, and it cuts wood, hence the name. It's meant to be durable as the edges are coated with tungsten carbide grit, and it gives nice straight cuts and really does slice through wood like it's butter. Keep in mind though that the max depth you'll get with one of these is a little over ½ an inch, so it's pretty limited to thinner pieces of wood. You can cut the top and then the bottom, but good luck getting a clean cut. Also, the Dremel itself might be in the way in some scenarios, so you might not be able to get a perfectly vertical cut. The 561 with a guide might be better for those deeper cuts. You can use this for shaping, but I think putting that force on the face of the wheel where it isn't meant to cut will end up deforming it over time. Also, for the price of these, I wish they were a little more flat. The final side note is some easy twist attachments like this one also come on screw mandrels. For example, you can look up the 543, which is like this one, but on a different mandrel, like the one this Dremel 801 comes on. How's that for a transition? The 801 is my preferred tool for shaping wood and has a carbide coating on the face of it, along with this curved profile, allowing you to pretty accurately shape broad areas. Think of it like a mini angle grinder for wood. In a different video, I roughed out an entire bowl with one of these no problem, and it's still sharp as can be. Someone commented on that one that I had big toes for thumbs, so like if you agree. This is the extreme toothpick bit. Just kidding, don't do that. These are grinding stones. They usually come in two colors, the brown being aluminum oxide and the gray being silicon carbide. They both can grind a wide array of materials, but the gray is for non-ferrous materials like stone, glass, and ceramics, while the brown is better for metal and ferrous materials like casting and welds. I like these for smoothing out metal edges or very roughly sharpening blades. Bladesmiths are probably cringing at the thought of that, but it's fine. There's even specialty sets for chainsaw sharpening. Careful with either of these when grinding soft metals like aluminum though, because they can gunk up pretty fast. And although it's not an official use, I like using these smaller silicon carbide bits for grinding out tight spots and carvings before sanding. This is the Dremel 425 polishing wheel, not to be confused with the 541 AU on the right, which is a grinding wheel. We'll look at the 425 later. The 541 is basically for anything larger that you need a mini grinding wheel for, like rivets, rust, welded joints, stainless steel castings, etc. It uses the 402 mandrel. This bit looks like a cutting disc, but guess what? It's also the 541 bit, the 541 GR for metal grinding. I swear some intern forgot there was already a 541, but anyways, it's sort of concaved like an angle grinder wheel, and apparently lasts 4 times longer and removes twice the material as the other 541s. And yes, I filmed this at the store because I didn't want to buy a bit I don't need for a video. These are tungsten carbide burrs. They're great for deburring metal, engraving, wood carving, you name it. Think of them just as really large engraving bits meant to remove a lot of material quickly. These sets are great since they're really affordable, but also the variety of shapes lets you use them for different things. And they usually leave pretty smooth cuts when you're wood carving. You'll see them in either single cut or double cut variations. They're really similar, but the single cut usually leaves smoother edges, where the double cut removes material faster. Dremel sells max life versions of these, like the 9903 HP, at just 10 times the price, and they paint them gold because it looks cool. There's also something about them being titanium nitride coated, so they last longer. I don't know, I didn't bother getting them because these off-brand ones work fine. This is a set of Dremel drill bits in 7 sizes from 0.8 to 3.2 millimeters, and although it says metal, you can use these for wood, plastic, and plexiglass. I just wouldn't use these on harder metals to be safe. Most drills run from 2,000 to 3,000 RPM, while Dremel can run 10 times that speed, so these are great for drilling really clean holes. Since these vary so much in size, you'll need the Collet multi-pack, or even better, the keyless chuck. Also, you can get them from a bunch of other brands. My favorite Godfather sent me these, which are longer than the Dremel one on the left, which is nice. These are leather burnishing bits. Bet you didn't know you could do that. And I did make the one on the left. Stay tuned. These are the felt polishing wheels, and they're mostly used for polishing metals, but I've used them for polishing anything from epoxy to stone. The classic felt ones come in 2 sizes and screw into the 401 mandrel. There's also a version that's shaped more like an earplug if you want a tip. To use them, you can use whatever polishing compound you want, but they usually come with this red polishing compound from Dremel. I often see people turn on the Dremel to put on the compound, or rub the compound onto whatever they're polishing. But that's a huge waste of compound since most of it gets flung into the abyss, only to be found amongst forgotten dreams and buried aspirations. So I prefer to mount the wheel and then turn it by hand in the compound until it's coated. Here I'm using it on aluminum, works great, and a 1964 penny that I'm really hoping wasn't worth anything. There's also the cloth polishing wheel, which is used with the Easy 402 mandrel, and instead of one large felt mass, it's multiple layers of cloth. They work pretty similarly. Here I'm using it on galvanized steel, but neither wheel version are very durable, so you'll need a few for larger projects. Also, something I find strange about the Dremel compound is it doesn't say what grit it is. It seems mild, but comment below if you know. As shown earlier, this is a 425 emery impregnated polishing wheel. I don't know if they had to use that word impregnated. Anyways, it's a sort of hard foam material that has an impregnated grit in it, so you can use it for general polishing or ferrous metals, stone, ceramics, glass, whatever you want. This is the Nylon bristle brush, which is soft, so you gotta be gentle with it, and it's for polishing and general cleaning, like a very fast toothbrush. Don't use it as a toothbrush. The much heavier duty version would be this carbon steel brush, which I find is great for removing rust, but it does also scratch up the underlying metal quite a bit. Also careful because the wires can rip out and hit you, especially if you're using too much pressure. The metal and nylon brushes come in a variety of shapes to get into those little nooks and crannies, and even come in a variety of materials like brass and stainless steel. This is an abrasive buff, and the Dremel version comes in 120, 280, and 320 grit, and are used with Easy 402 mandrel, and they can be used for either fine sanding or rough polishing. It's like a chunk of a Scotch-Brite pad on a mandrel, which I've actually seen people do. Anyways, I started using these for wood carvings, and they were a game changer. You can get really smooth surfaces on curves, and you can get texture when buffing heterogeneous materials. If you're not all woody like me, these are great for cleaning up metal too. I know a lot of people who do automotive work like to use these. The Dremel ones are expensive, and regardless of brand, these don't last very long. So I like to get the bulk packs on Amazon that go from 120 to 400 grit. And even though they don't last as long as the Dremel ones, you get so many that it doesn't matter. Trust me, if you're into carving, you should really try these out. They're also selling these beefy ones that are max life, so they last 4 times as long by apparently just packing on twice as much material. Not sure how that math works. For grinding out material on really hard surfaces like stone, glass, or tile, you might need a diamond burr. These are good for etching hard surfaces or grinding down stones if you're patient enough. This Dremel one can even drill holes in glass. You really need to take your time though if you're going to remove a lot of glass or stone, and using water usually helps to keep them from dulling as fast. The flex shaft also makes that easier to keep the splash away from the motor. These off-brand ones on the right dull much faster than the Dremel ones, but in general they're durable enough, even when you're using them against really hard materials. I've even used these on hardwoods for engraving. Okay, real quick before I get to the last bits, I have a personal goal, which is probably a far stretch, but I'm trying to hit 30,000 subs by my birthday coming up, so gently and kindly click that button if you'd like to join the club. Thank you. This is the 561 Multipurpose Cutting Bit, which is a huge staple for me and basically comes with every Dremel. It's long and sharp and allows you to roughly cut tons of material like wood, plastic, fiberglass, drywall, laminate, aluminum, vinyl, whatever. You can use it freehand or with an attachment like the 565 if you need it to stay vertical. For bits shaped like this though, try not to cut full force on the whole face of the bit. It's better to do several shallow passes. You can also use the side for quick shaping. Just be careful. I've cut myself on this one several times over the years because it can bite into the wood and then go all over the place, including where your hands are. You could probably also hurt yourself on any Dremel bit, so always follow the manual and safety instructions of your tools. I'm showing some of the 4300 manual now. I'll also put a safety video and tool disclaimer in the description once I make those. This is not an official Dremel video or a safety video, so please just be careful and responsible and do your research. I want to keep you all safe. This also isn't an RPM video, but some people won't be happy about that. So real quick, I like to look at the manual the Dremel comes with. This one has RPM ranges, so for the 561 for example, if I'm using it for hardwood, I should use 12 to 35,000 RPM. That's quite the range though, so I usually go somewhere in the middle, like 20 to 25,000. You can also see it's not meant for certain materials like steel, stone, ceramic, or glass. Pause if you want to see the other RPMs listed. Go ahead and check out my second channel if you want a more in-depth video on this topic. It should be posted about the same time as this one. And also if you don't know the name of the bit or if it isn't listed, you can try searching for it online or finding it in stores and then reading more about it. Sorry for that tangent. So similar to the 561, the Drywall Cutting Bit is long and sharp, but it has this guide point that has a tip to poke through drywall and a flat bit that lets you ride around a plug box, light, air vent, whatever, so you can cut the drywall without cutting the plastic or metal inside the box, similar to a guided routing bit. You might want to use a depth gauge though, like with the circle cutting attachment or the 565, so you're not shredding electrical wires or cutting where you don't want to. And finally for the last bit, we're at the Dremel 562 tile cutting bit, and despite its name, I don't use this bit for tile, even though I'm going to do that right now. I usually use it for wood or plastic or drywall because I often think the 561 is way too aggressive and I want a similar cut with more precision, so I use the 562. It still has sharp cutting edges, but they're smaller, which minimizes kickback and sloppiness. Here I'm comparing the 561 to the 562 cutting 1/4 inch pine. And you can see how much cleaner the cut is for the 562. This is for sure one of my top 5 bits for the Dremel, but it's almost never included with Dremels or in Dremel bit sets, so I do think it's really underappreciated, and I highly recommend giving it a try. Alright guys, that's all the bits I'll cover today. There are thousands of third-party bits on the market, so make sure you check the comments in case I missed any important ones. You might find something cool. Thank you to everyone who's given super thanks or Ko-Fi donations. That helps me a lot with this channel. And as I mentioned before, feel free to check out the description for a link to each bit on Amazon in case you're interested in trying something new. Go ahead and leave a like or a comment below which country has the best food. Just kidding, don't do that. Comment what you'd like to see next. Also, I'm making a second channel. I'll link it in the description if you want to subscribe, but I'm not exactly sure what I'm doing with it yet. I think it'd be a fun challenge to see how fast we could get that channel to 1,000 subs. Anyways, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.